The world was quiet. The surface of Ashen Reach stretched beneath a grey sky, its deserts flat and lifeless, its mountains brittle with the erosion of uncounted ages. Once, long ago, rivers had flowed in silver veins down these valleys, and cities had glittered in the dawn light, their towers reaching into the heavens. Now they were nothing more than carcasses of glass and stone, half buried by dust. The planet did not breathe, it did not move, it did not live. It waited. Beneath that silence lay the sleepers, deep under the planet's crust, in vaults carved with precision so fine that no passing eye could detect them, lay rows upon rows of chambers. Within each chamber was a figure, human, pale with the stillness of centuries, suspended in timeless stasis. Their bodies had not aged. Their minds drifted in darkness, wrapped in a slumber that no dream disturbed. Systems hummed faintly around them, machines older than the current age of stars, endlessly circulating, endlessly patient. The sleepers had been forgotten by the galaxy, their world marked as dead and abandoned, their kind reduced to myth. But the silence was about to be broken. Far above, the blackness of space was pierced by silver flares. The alien fleet descended, their ships angular and jagged, like the carapaces of monstrous insects. The vessels were not designed for beauty or elegance, they were built for hunger. Each carried claws of steel to tear stone from planets, plasma furnaces to melt down resources, and cages to carry away whatever creatures were found beneath. The invaders had no reverence for history. To them, the ruins below were not the remnants of a once great civilization. They were bones, waiting to be stripped clean. The alien commander, a massive being with a serrated crest running along his skull, gazed down at the planet from the command deck of his flagship. His eyes glowed like molten amber as he studied the readings. He saw no shields, no active networks, no fleets in orbit. The world was defenseless. "Another corpse world," he said in his guttural tongue. His voice vibrated like stones grinding together. "Strip it, scour it, leave nothing but ash." The fleet descended. The first strikes fell upon the ruins of cities, their ancient avenues splitting apart under bombardment. The dust of collapsed towers rose into the sky, choking the already grey horizon. From orbit, massive drills were launched, plunging deep into the planet's crust. Swarms of small craft spread across the surface like locusts, searching for salvage. Their scanners swept through layers of stone and steel, prying into the bones of the planet. It was during this scavenging that they discovered something unusual. Beneath the sands of a ruined plateau, their instruments registered a hollow, vast, and complex, a buried facility intact. Unlike the surface ruins, this structure resisted their scans, its walls built of alloys that refused to yield to the probing beams. That alone was enough to stir their greed. Buried treasure, perhaps, a cache of technology, maybe weapons, maybe secrets. The commander snarled with pleasure. "Open it." Massive cutters were brought down. Lasers burned through the upper crust, and mechanical jaws pried apart the rock. The aliens worked tirelessly, driven not by curiosity but by hunger. Hours passed, and finally the roof of the ancient vault cracked open. A breath of air, trapped for centuries, escaped into the alien night. Inside, the stasis chambers waited. Thousands of them, aligned in perfect rows, their glassy surfaces dim with the haze of time. The aliens entered cautiously, weapons raised, but the halls were still. No movement, no sound, just silence so deep it pressed against their senses. They approached the nearest chamber and peered inside. A human lay within. The alien raiders stared at the figure. The shape was unfamiliar to most of them, though their histories had fragments of knowledge about beings that looked like this. Fragile, soft-skinned, lacking claws or scales, yet something about the still figure unsettled them. Its face was calm, its posture unyielding, as though it was not simply sleeping, but waiting. "What is it?" asked one of the alien soldiers. "An old creature," the commander answered, "long dead or trapped in some primitive stasis. Irrelevant, break it open. If there is value here, we will find it." The soldier approached, raising a heavy tool. He struck the side of the chamber. The glass did not shatter, He struck again, harder. The surface cracked faintly, releasing a sound like a groan. The soldier sneered and raised his weapon once more. And then the hum began. It was faint at first, almost imperceptible, like the whisper of a buried current. The chamber flickered with light, a dim pulse running through its veins. The alien soldier stepped back, uncertain. The commander's eyes narrowed. The hum grew louder, the pulse stronger. Across the entire vault, other chambers began to stir, lights awakening after their endless night. The aliens raised their weapons, instincts screaming. The first human opened his eyes. They were pale at first, unfocused, but then sharpened with sudden clarity. He drew his first breath in centuries, chest heaving against the confines of the chamber. The glass cracked again, and then, with a deafening shatter, the barrier collapsed outward. The human fell forward onto the floor, coughing, gasping, but alive, truly alive. The aliens surrounded him instantly, weapons aimed. The human looked up, and though his body trembled with weakness, there was no fear in his gaze. His eyes, grey as the planet's sky, fixed upon the creatures that had awoken him. One of the soldiers moved to strike him down. The human moved faster. Despite his long sleep, his instincts surged. He caught the alien's wrist, twisted, and ripped the weapon free with a strength born not of muscle alone, but of something deeper, a legacy buried in his bones. The weapon hissed, fired, and the alien crumpled to the floor. The chamber hall erupted in chaos. Other stasis pods began to open, one after another, humans spilling forth in staggering confusion. The aliens fired into the awakening crowd, plasma bolts striking walls and bodies alike, but the humans adapted quickly, seizing weapons, striking with desperate fury. They were not yet many, and they were not yet organized, but something primal ignited within them. They were not prey. They were survivors. The commander roared, ordering his troops to retreat from the vault. The aliens fell back, dragging their dead with them, the hiss of their weapons echoing in the chamber. The humans, left behind, gathered in the shadows, their breaths ragged, their hearts thundering. They had no words, yet no plan, but they had awoken together. That was enough. Above them, the alien fleet tightened its grip on Ashen Reach. Fires spread across the surface as resource crawlers burrowed deeper into the crust. Cities that had lain undisturbed for centuries were torn apart, yet the raiders did not know what they had truly uncovered. They believed they had stumbled upon relics of a long-dead species. They did not realize they had awakened a storm. The silence of Ashen Reach was broken. And the galaxy would never be the same again. The alien fleet hung over Ashen Reach like a nest of predators. Their ships were vast, each one built with the same philosophy that guided their entire species: strength, hunger, and dominance. No smooth curves softened their designs, no artistry adorned their hulls. The vessels were angular, jagged, plated in black iron, streaked with scars from countless battles. Every line screamed of utility. They were not ships meant to endure peacefully. They were ships meant to kill. Within the flagship Scourge of Veia, the alien commander paced across the wide chamber of command. His footsteps echoed against iron floors. Around him, officers bent over displays of resource yields, maps of excavation sites, and tactical overlays of the planet's surface. He moved with a predator's confidence, his tall frame draped in segmented armor that glistened under the dim light. His serrated crest, a crown of bone and horn that extended down his spine, was a mark of his authority, his right to rule, earned in the blood of rivals. His name was Karvek, and he had risen through his people's brutal trials with a single principle: never leave prey standing. Now his amber eyes fixed on the projection of Ashen Reach, its surface lit with markers of excavation. He felt no awe at its ruined cities, no curiosity about the civilization that had once thrived there. To him, all that mattered was what could be stripped and consumed: stone. Metal, power, life, yet the discovery of the underground vault gnawed at him. The soldier who had survived the skirmish inside the vault now stood before him, head bowed, shoulders quivering. A burn scar streaked across his scaled chest where plasma fire had grazed him during the chaos. His claws clenched at his sides as he spoke. "They were alive, Warfather," he said. his voice cracked with disbelief. The chambers opened, the creatures fought. Creatures, Karvek cut him off, his voice a growl. Describe them. They were shaped like us in some ways, soft-skinned, weak-looking, but fast, too fast. One of them killed 2 of our hunters before we could react. Karvek's eyes narrowed, his crest flared, a sign of annoyance. A trick of chance. You allowed the sleepers to surprise you. That is all. The soldier shook his head, his scales rippling with unease. It was more than chance, Warfather. They moved like predators. They fought as if they had done so before, though they had just awoken. And the chambers, there are thousands, perhaps tens of thousands. A hush fell across the command chamber. Officers glanced at each other, their claws tapping against consoles. Karvek's gaze swept the room, silencing the whispers, his teeth bared in a grim smile. Then we are fortunate, he said. If this world hides so many sleepers, then it hides resources greater than we imagined. Slaves, test subjects, meat for the grinders, or perhaps soldiers for the arenas. It does not matter what they are, only that they belong to us now. The officers bowed their heads in agreement, though unease lingered. Karvek turned toward the wide viewport at the edge of the chamber. Ashen Reach sprawled beneath him, a husk of dust and ruin. Yet somewhere down there, in its hollow belly, the sleepers were stirring. He tapped a claw against the glass. Send more hunters into the vault. Secure it. Do not kill too many of them. I want specimens brought back alive. The hunters of Karvek's people were no common soldiers. They were bred and trained for ferocity, their bodies scarred with ritual burns, their jaws sharpened with obsidian teeth. They descended into the vaults in armored columns, plasma rifles slung across their chests, nets and binding hooks coiled at their belts. Their orders were simple: capture, dominate, and break whatever resisted. The halls of the ancient vault were lit by the glow of awakening chambers. More and more humans had risen from their stasis, stumbling into the cold light, still disoriented from centuries of sleep. Some wept. Some clung to each other in confusion. Others stood silent, eyes hardening as their memories flickered back into focus. The hunters descended upon them without hesitation. Bolts of plasma fire struck the walls, hissing and cracking. Humans scattered, many falling before the storm, but something unexpected followed. Instead of fleeing deeper into the vault, instead of collapsing under fear, some humans advanced. They seized the fallen hunters' weapons, strange alien tools that hummed with power. They learned them instantly, as if their instincts had been forged for war. Plasma bolts answered plasma bolts, and alien hunters screamed as their own weapons were turned against them. The hunters fought savagely, yet for the first time in cycles beyond memory, they were met with prey that refused to yield. Far above, on the flagship, Karvek watched the battle feed with growing fascination. He leaned closer to the display, his amber eyes narrowing as humans stood against his hunters. He watched a small band of them coordinate without words, flanking, feinting, striking as though they were recalling an art long forgotten. He saw the fire in their expressions, not the blank terror of cattle, but something sharper, something dangerous. "What are they?" he muttered. An officer shifted uneasily. "Records speak of an ancient people, Warfather, one who spread across the stars before the rise of our kind. They vanished long ago, their worlds silent. Perhaps these are the remnants." Karvek's crest bristled. "If they are ancient, then they are weak. Age rots strength. They slept because they were broken, too feeble to survive in the galaxy we now rule." Yet even as he spoke, doubt gnawed at him. The feed showed one human tearing a weapon from a hunter's grip with brutal precision, then driving it back through the alien's chest. Another, unarmed, tackled a hunter from behind and slammed his skull against the ground until it cracked. Weakness did not move like that. Karvek silenced the feed with a slash of his claw. He would not show hesitation to his officers. "Send more," he ordered. "Overwhelm them before they multiply further. Break their will now while they are few." The officers obeyed, though unease rippled through the chamber. On the surface of Ashen Reach, the alien scavenger fleets continued their plunder. Towers were torn down to feed the furnaces. Resource crawlers dug deep trenches into the crust, spewing dust into the sky. Sacred relics of the planet's forgotten age were dismantled piece by piece, melted down for raw material. The aliens treated the ruins with contempt. To them, history was meaningless. Only power endured. Only hunger mattered. But in the shadows of the vaults, a different truth was awakening. The humans, still disoriented but increasingly united, were discovering that their past had not abandoned them. Memories returned in flashes, battles, machines, skies filled with fire. They remembered how to fight. And though they were outnumbered, though they were unarmed and half-naked, they were not afraid. Karvek did not yet realize it, but his people had made a mistake larger than any raid before. They had mistaken silence for death and stillness for weakness. They had forgotten that predators who sleep do not stop being predators. They only dream of the day they will rise again. He awoke with the taste of iron on his tongue. For a moment, the man lay on the cold floor of the vault, coughing, lungs straining to remember how to breathe. His vision swam in blurred shapes and searing lights. His muscles burned with the weight of centuries, yet his heart hammered with such ferocity it seemed it would break his chest open. He pushed himself onto hands and knees, breath rasping, and the echoes of chaos flooded in. Alien voices barked guttural commands, weapons hissed and spat fire. Humans cried out, some in terror, some in defiance. His name was Kalen. He did not know how he remembered it, but it came to him like a spark through the fog. Kalen, that was who he was. And though he had just awoken into this nightmare, the name brought with it more than identity. It carried a weight, a history, and a memory of fire. He staggered to his feet. Around him, others were awakening. They spilled from shattered chambers, their bodies pale and trembling, their eyes wide with shock. Some fell to the floor, weeping, unable to understand the sudden cruelty of their birth into this age. Others froze, staring at the alien hunters as if unable to believe such monsters existed. But a few, just a few, moved with the same instinct Kalen felt, an instinct that screamed, survive. One of the hunters lunged toward a woman who had barely pulled herself free from her chamber. Without thinking, Kalen hurled himself at the alien, slamming his shoulder into its torso. The impact sent them both sprawling, the alien's weapon skittering across the floor. Kalen's hands moved before his mind caught up. He wrapped his fingers around the alien's throat, felt the scales grind against his skin, and squeezed with everything he had. The alien roared and thrashed, claws tearing into his arms, but Kalen did not let go. He twisted violently, and something cracked beneath his grip. The alien went still. Kalen fell back, gasping, blood streaming down his forearms from shallow cuts. His chest heaved. His mind screamed at him to stop, to run, to hide. But another part of him, deep and primal, whispered something different. You have done this before. You will do it again. The woman he had saved stared at him, her eyes wide with terror and gratitude. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but no words came. Instead, she crawled to the fallen alien weapon, lifted it awkwardly, and held it in trembling hands. Stay close, Kalen told her, though his voice was hoarse and strange to his own ears. Stay alive. The vault had become a battlefield. Humans staggered from their chambers into a storm of plasma fire. Many fell where they stood, their bodies unprepared for violence after centuries of stillness. Yet others rose to meet the chaos, learning in moments what should have taken years. They seized alien weapons, mimicking the motions they had just seen. They learned to pull triggers, to angle barrels, to duck behind cover. Every second, more of them adapted. Kalen moved through the confusion with grim purpose. He did not understand why his body knew how to fight, why his reflexes guided him through each clash, but he trusted them. He ripped a weapon from a fallen alien's grip and fired, the recoil jarring but familiar. The bolt struck another alien in the chest, sending it collapsing in a heap. A surge of grim satisfaction lit his veins. He was not alone. The woman he had saved, whose name he would later learn was Arya, fought beside him, clumsy at first but steadier with each breath. Together they pulled others out of the line of fire, shouting at them to move, to hide, to fight back. It was not enough. For every alien that fell, 3 more pressed forward. They moved in coordinated packs, their scaled bodies gleaming with ritual scars, their jaws snapping in bloodlust. They fired without hesitation, cutting down the weak and unarmed. The humans were too few, too scattered, too newly awoken. This was slaughter. Kalen felt despair claw at him as he ducked behind the shattered shell of a stasis chamber. He fired blindly into the advancing hunters, but the storm only grew. Around him, humans screamed and died. And then, through the chaos, a voice cut through. "Here, with me," Kalen turned. A tall woman stood on a raised platform near the vault's central spire. Her dark hair clung to her face with sweat, her eyes alight with fierce clarity. In one hand she held a stolen alien blade, its edge glowing faintly. In the other she held a plasma rifle. Around her a small group of humans had gathered, rallying to her call. "Fall back to the spire," she shouted, her voice carrying with authority. "Together we survive, alone we die." Kalen felt the pull of her command. He could not explain why, but her words struck something deep inside him. Without hesitation, he seized Arya's arm and dragged her toward the spire. Others followed, drawn by the certainty in the woman's voice. The hunters noticed the shift and pressed harder, firing into the fleeing humans. Kalen sprinted across open ground, his body burning with exhaustion. Plasma bolts scorched the floor at his heels. He shoved Arya behind a broken pillar and turned to fire back, buying moments for others to reach the spire. One bolt seared across his shoulder, spinning him to the ground. He cried out, the pain white-hot, but his grip on the weapon never faltered. He fired until the rifle's power cell whined empty. Hands pulled him up. It was Arya, her face twisted with determination. Together they stumbled to the platform, where the tall woman and her gathered band formed a ring of defiance. "Hold," the woman commanded. "Make them bleed for every step." The humans obeyed. Weapons cracked and hissed. Blades flashed. For the first time, the hunters faltered. They had expected prey. They found predators awakening. The standoff could not last. Numbers pressed against the small band, and the hunters began to circle, cutting off escape routes. Kalen saw it in their eyes. They meant to end this here. But then something stirred within the spire itself. The ancient machinery, dormant for centuries, had been awakened by the chaos. Lights flickered across its surface. Deep vibrations thrummed through the floor. The hunters hesitated, glancing uneasily at the rising glow. And then the spire spoke. It was not a voice, not in any tongue. It was a pulse, a wave that swept through the vault and into the minds of every human present. Kalen staggered as visions burst behind his eyes, skies filled with fire, fleets of ships spanning the void, battles fought against enemies both alien and familiar. He saw humanity as it had once been, vast and terrible, a force that had bent the stars to its will. He gasped, clutching his head. The others fell to their knees, crying out in shock as fragments of memory cascaded through them. The hunters recoiled, uncertain, their weapons wavering. When the vision passed, Kalen rose slowly to his feet. His chest still burned, his shoulder still bled, but his eyes burned brighter than before. He remembered, not everything, not yet, but enough. Enough to know that they were not broken remnants. They were heirs of a forgotten fire. He turned to the tall woman who stood at the center of the group, her face pale but resolute. She met his gaze, and in that moment, without words, Kalen knew she would be the one to lead them. "What is your name?" he asked, his voice hoarse. She lifted her chin. "My name is Seria." The name settled into the hearts of the survivors like a brand. Seria, a name to follow, a name to rally around. The hunters advanced again, snarling, unwilling to surrender their prey. But the humans stood taller now, their fear burned away by the vision of what they had been. They raised their stolen weapons, voices steady, and when the next wave struck, they did not break. The vault was silent again, but it was no longer the silence of death. It was the silence of breathing lungs, of beating hearts, of people holding themselves together by sheer will after the storm had passed. Dozens of humans now clustered around the base of the spire. Some leaned against broken chambers, too weak to stand. Others sat with heads bowed, clutching wounds or staring blankly into the distance, lost in the shock of their sudden awakening. The smell of smoke and blood hung heavy in the air. Alien corpses littered the floor, their scaled bodies twisted and charred. The surviving humans had dragged them into piles, partly to clear the space, partly because none of them could bear to look at them. Kalen sat near the edge of the group, pressing a strip of torn cloth to the burn wound across his shoulder. Every breath made the injury flare with fire, but he forced his jaw shut against the pain. He had bled before. He would bleed again. Across from him, Arya tended to another survivor, wrapping a strip of bandage around a young man's leg. Her hands shook, but her voice was steady, calming the boy as he winced. Kalen watched her for a moment. She had been fragile when he pulled her from her chamber, but she had not faltered since. She moved with a quiet strength that reminded him of something familiar, though he could not name it. At the heart of the survivors stood Seria. She had taken no rest since the fighting. She moved among the people, speaking to each one, helping them bind wounds, steadying them with her voice. Kalen noticed the way they looked at her, the way eyes followed her, how spines straightened when she passed. She was no more rested than any of them, yet she carried herself as though she had been born to lead. When at last she called them to gather, they obeyed without hesitation. "We cannot stay here," she said, her voice low but firm. "The hunters will come again, and they will come with greater numbers. If we remain, they will slaughter us all." A murmur of fear rippled through the survivors. A young woman spoke, her voice trembling. "Where would we go? This is all there is. We have nothing." Seria shook her head. "This vault is not all there is. We were not placed here to rot in glass coffins. This place was built for something more. You felt it, the vision. The spire remembers us. Somewhere in these halls lies what we need to survive." The survivors shifted uneasily. Some nodded, clutching to her certainty. Others looked away, fear shadowing their faces. Kalen pushed himself to his feet, wincing as his shoulder flared. "She is right," he said. His voice carried rough and hoarse, but the words steadied the air. "When I awoke, I thought we were finished. I thought we were prey. But I saw what happened when we stood together. We fought them. We killed them. That means we can do it again." He glanced at the corpses piled at the edge of the chamber. "They bleed as we do. They die as we do. They are not gods. They are not masters. They are flesh and bone, and they can be broken." The murmur rose again, but this time it carried less fear. Seria nodded. "We move. We search this vault. We gather weapons, food, anything we can find. We prepare to fight because they will come again, and when they do, we will not scatter. We will not hide. We will stand." The survivors, weary and terrified as they were, found themselves straightening, drawn by her fire. Even the most broken among them felt a spark take root in their chests. They were not alone. They were not helpless. They were beginning to remember who they were. The vault stretched deeper than any of them had realized. With Arya at her side, Seria led small groups into branching corridors, lighting their way with the faint glow of alien rifles. The halls were built of alloys that had not corroded in centuries, etched with patterns that none could yet decipher. Kalen walked at the front of one such group, weapons slung over his shoulder. Every shadow made his pulse quicken, every creak of ancient machinery drew his finger toward the trigger. The memory of the hunters' guttural voices still rang in his ears. He expected an ambush at every corner. Instead, what they found were wonders. In one chamber, they discovered crates sealed with markings older than their language. Within were ration packs, dusty, brittle, but still preserved. The taste was bitter, yet edible. They devoured them with desperation, the first true food in their new lives. In another hall, they found a cache of strange, skeletal machines, their frames coated in dust. At Kalen's touch, one shuddered and collapsed into stillness. Another hummed faintly, lights flickering weakly. Whatever they had been built for, their time had not yet returned. But the discovery lit a hunger in the survivors' eyes. If these machines could stir again, perhaps other weapons lay hidden deeper still. At the farthest reach of the vault, they found something more. The chamber was vast, its ceiling lost in shadow, its walls lined with dormant consoles. At its center rose a towering construct of steel and crystal, faintly pulsing with light. Seria approached it slowly, reverence in her steps. She touched the surface, and once again the pulse flared through them all. Visions struck Kalen's mind like lightning, fleets soaring through black skies, titans of war striding across battlefields. Humanity as conquerors, builders, warriors. He staggered, clutching his head, but the images filled him with fire. The construct spoke, not in words, but in understanding. It was a repository, a memory of what had been, and though its message was fragmented, broken by time, it left no doubt. You are not the last, you are the beginning. Seria drew a sharp breath. This is not a tomb, she whispered. It is a cradle. Above, the alien fleet tightened its grip on Ashen Reach. From the bridge of the Scourge of Vaya, Karvek watched new reports flood in. Dozens of hunters dead, survivors resisting, untrained, unarmed creatures fighting back with stolen weapons. He clenched his clawed hands around the railing, his crest flaring with anger. This is no rabble, one of his officers said quietly. They fight as if they were made for it. We have awakened something dangerous. Karvek bared his teeth. Dangerous or not, they are ours. We will crush them before they grow stronger. Ready the burners. If they will not be prey, then let them be ash. Back in the vault, Kalen sat beside a flickering console, exhaustion pulling at his bones. Around him, survivors rested in uneasy silence. Arya leaned against the wall nearby, her eyes heavy with fatigue. Across the chamber, Seria spoke quietly with a few others, already planning the next steps. Kalen closed his eyes, but sleep did not come. The visions from the spire haunted him, burning behind his eyelids. He saw humanity as it had once been, not fragile, not hunted, but fierce, vast, terrible. He did not know how much of that power remained, but he knew one thing with certainty. The spark had been lit, and fire once lit would spread. The aliens returned at dawn. Not that the vault dwellers had any sense of day or night anymore, not in the lightless underworld where they had awakened. But when the distant tremors began, heavy footfalls echoing through the stone, the hiss of plasma cutters breaking new seams in the upper rock, they knew another wave had come. Kalen felt it in his chest before the sounds reached his ears. His instincts, sharpened by battle and by something older that lay dormant in his blood, told him danger was closing. He lifted his weapon, though its power cell was nearly drained, and turned to Seria. They will not stop, he said. They will send more, stronger each time. We cannot meet them in the open again. They will slaughter us. Seria's eyes, bright with exhaustion and fire, met his. Then we changed the field. The survivors moved quickly. Seria split them into groups, hunters, scouts, defenders. She spoke as if she had done this before, though none of them could remember serving under her in any past life. Her orders were precise, her confidence absolute. People who hours ago had been weeping on the floor now moved with purpose, carrying salvaged blades and alien rifles, dragging debris to create choke points. Kalen found himself at the head of one group, alongside Arya and a boy named Darren, whose quiet hands could coax dying alien weapons back into flickering life. They crouched in a shadowed corridor, waiting, every muscle trembling with tension. The first alien entered moments later. The hunter stalked through the dark like a reptile searching for warmth, its rifle sweeping from side to side. It sniffed the air, jaws clacking, crest twitching with unease. The humans waited, breaths held. The alien stepped past their barricade. Kalen struck first. He burst from the shadows, slamming the butt of his rifle into the alien's jaw. The creature roared, but Kalen was already on it, wrenching the weapon aside, driving a blade into the gap between armor plates. Arya leapt in next, firing her rifle point-blank into the alien's chest. It collapsed, smoking and twitching, before it could raise its weapon. The humans did not cheer. They dragged the corpse back, stripped its armor and weapons, and reset their ambush. Moments later, more came. The second squad of hunters fared worse. Kalen's group struck from both sides, collapsing the corridor behind them with rubble. Plasma bolts ricocheted wildly, striking both alien and stone. Darren knelt behind cover, coaxing sparks from a dead rifle until it roared back to life, its bolts burning 2 hunters down before they could react. By the time the last alien fell, the humans were breathing heavily but smiling grimly. For the first time they had chosen the ground. For the first time they had not just survived but won. Above, in the flagship Scourge of Veia, reports poured in. Another squad lost, an officer growled, his scaled hands tightening on the console. Ambushed, weapons turned against them. Karvek loomed above, his amber eyes blazing. Pray do not ambush hunters. The officer hesitated. Then perhaps they are not prey. The room fell silent. The words were dangerous, nearly heretical among their kind. Their creed was simple. There were only hunters and prey, and to speak of something in between was to challenge the order of their universe. Karvek's crest flared, his teeth bared. Do not speak of weakness. They are flesh. We are steel. They will break. Ready the flame casters. If they scurry like vermin, we will smoke them from their holes. The officers bowed, but unease rippled through them. The humans did not rest. With each small victory, they grew bolder. They set traps in corridors, rigging collapsed chambers to bury alien squads. They learned the weight of alien rifles, the timing of their plasma bursts, the best angles to strike their armor. Some fell in every skirmish, their bodies burned and broken, but the survivors dragged their weapons away, whispering the dead's names so they would not be lost. Kalen began to notice something else. His body was changing. The weakness of awakening faded faster than it should have. Muscles hardened, his breath steadied. He could run longer, fight harder, recover more quickly than seemed natural. Arya remarked on the same in herself, as did others. It is the stasis, Saria said when they brought it to her. She sat near the spire, its light faintly pulsing against her skin. It preserved us, but it did more. It sharpened us. We were not placed here to sleep as prisoners. We were placed here to wait, to rise ready. Her words spread like fire. Survivors who had thought themselves frail began to move with new confidence. They tested their limits and found those limits greater than they expected. They were becoming hunters. That night, if night it could be called, Kalen kept watch at the barricade. The vault was quiet save for the faint hum of ancient machinery. He sat with Arya, who leaned against the wall, eyes half closed. You move like you have done this before, she said softly. Kalen glanced at her. Perhaps I have, but I do not remember. Do you want to remember? He was silent for a long time. Images flickered in his mind, fleets of ships, skies on fire, humanity roaring across the stars. The vision from the spire had been too vivid to be imagination. If remembering tells us who we are, he said at last, then yes, I want to remember. Arya nodded. I think I am afraid to. He studied her face, pale in the dim light. Why? Because what if who we were is worse than what hunts us now? Kalen had no answer. The next attack was different. The hunters came not in small squads, but in waves. They poured into the vault in dozens, their weapons blazing, their claws rending stone. Behind them came machines, spidery constructs that crawled on steel legs, their bellies glowing with furnaces. When they fired, streams of white-hot flame roared out, scouring walls and bodies alike. The survivors faltered. Ambushes broke under the sheer weight of numbers. Traps slowed the tide, but did not stop it. Humans fell screaming as flame washed over them, the smell of burning flesh filling the air. Kalen fought like a man possessed, slashing and firing, dragging survivors away from collapsing barricades. Arya stayed at his side, her rifle barking until it hissed empty. Darren fell behind them, struck by a plasma bolt, but with his dying breath he triggered a power cell overload, taking 3 hunters with him in a blast of light. Seria's voice cut through the chaos, steady and commanding. Fall back to the spire, all of you to the spire. The survivors obeyed, retreating through corridors thick with smoke and blood. The spire chamber became their last stand. They gathered in a ring around it, raising rifles and blades, faces streaked with ash. The hunters poured in, snarling, confident of victory, and then the spire awoke again. Its light surged, filling the chamber with brilliance. The floor shook. Ancient consoles lit with alien glyphs that burned into the survivors' minds as words they could understand. Weapons racks slid open from the walls, revealing blades of strange alloy, bows that hissed with energy, armor that hummed with power. The humans seized them with cries of awe. Kalen tore a blade from the rack, its edge vibrating with lethal resonance. Seria lifted a staff that pulsed with light, her eyes shining. The hunters hesitated. For the first time, they saw not prey, but warriors reborn. The charge broke against the humans like a wave against stone. Plasma bolts met energy shields. Blades of light cut through armor as if it were cloth. Hunters screamed as they fell, their corpses piling before the spire. When the last of them lay dead, the chamber was filled not with silence, but with the sound of ragged breathing and something more: laughter. Exhausted, bloody, half-broken, the humans laughed, because for the first time they had not merely survived, they had won. Far above, in the command chamber of the Scourge of Vaya, Karvek's claws gouged furrows in the iron railing. "They are not prey," he snarled. The words hung in the air, a truth none of his officers dared speak aloud. "They are predators," he said at last, his voice low with fury. "And we have woken them." The aftermath of the battle left the spire chamber thick with the scent of ozone and ash. Bodies lay strewn across the floor, alien and human alike. The stone was blackened with scorch marks, the air hazy with smoke. Survivors slumped against walls, their new weapons still clutched in trembling hands, their armor streaked with blood. Some wept, others sat in stunned silence, but all shared the same look in their eyes, a fire that had not been there before. Kalen stood among them, blade still in hand. His chest heaved, sweat running down his face, but his grip was steady. He looked at the pile of alien corpses, at the smoldering wreckage of the hunters' machines, and he knew with a deep certainty that something had shifted. They were no longer waiting for death. They were shaping it for others. Saria stepped into the center of the chamber. She was weary, her body streaked with cuts, her staff faintly glowing in her grasp. Yet when she raised her voice, it carried clear to every corner. "Look at what we have done." The survivors turned their faces toward her. "We were prey. We were hunted, beaten, burned. They came with fire and teeth, and they thought we would scatter like vermin. But we stood, we fought, and now they lie dead at our feet." She gestured to the corpses piled high. "This is proof, proof of what we are, proof of what they fear. Do not think they will stop. They will come again. They will come stronger, but let them, because we are not weak, we are not broken, we are human, and we have risen." A murmur rippled through the chamber. Some raised their weapons in salute. Others pressed hands to their hearts, whispering the word as though tasting it for the first time: human. Seria's gaze swept across them. "We will not scatter again. We will not cower in silence. From this moment forward, we are one people. We fight together. We bleed together. We rise together. And if the stars themselves stand against us, then let the stars tremble." The chamber shook, with voices answering her cry. Even the most battered survivors raised their voices, shouting, roaring. The sound rolled like thunder through the ancient halls. Kalen felt something stir deep in his chest. He had fought, he had bled, he had killed, but until this moment he had not felt the full weight of what they were. Now he did. The word echoed in his mind, ringing like steel: human. After the speech, Saria moved through the survivors, speaking with them one by one. She knew their names, even those who had only just awakened. She comforted the grieving, steadied the trembling, honored the dead. Wherever she went, people straightened. They looked to her as though she were more than a leader, as though she were the voice of something greater, something ancient. Arya watched her closely, admiration and unease mingling in her expression. Later, as she bound Kalen's wounded shoulder with steady hands, she spoke softly. "She has them already. Do you see it?" Kalen winced as the bandage tightened. "She has earned them." "Yes," Arya said, "but it is more than that. It is as if she was born to this, as if the spire itself chose her." Kalen thought of the way Saria had stood in the light of the spire, her eyes shining, her voice unshakable. Perhaps it did. Arya tied the last knot and sat back, frowning. "That power can save us, or it can destroy us. I pray she knows the difference." In the days that followed, the survivors began to shape themselves into something greater than a band of the lost. The vault's hidden stores provided food, armor, and weapons, though supplies were limited. Darren's sacrifice had left the humans without their most gifted tinkerer, but others stepped forward, discovering skills they had not known they possessed. Memories half buried in stasis stirred to life. An old woman recalling the intricacies of field medicine, a man remembering the rhythms of forging metal, a youth who found himself sketching maps of the vault with uncanny accuracy. Every day, Seria directed them. She organized patrols to guard the corridors, work parties to repair barricades, and small squads to scour deeper chambers for more supplies. She listened to advice, delegated tasks, and never faltered in her vision. Kalen became her blade. Wherever fighting was thickest, she sent him. He led raids into the broken upper halls, striking alien patrols before they could regroup. His name spread quickly among the survivors. Some began to whisper of him as the first hunter of their reborn people. Arya became the healer. She moved tirelessly among the wounded, coaxing life from those who would otherwise have slipped into death. She carried no staff, no shining blade, but the gratitude in every whispered name she saved gave her as much weight as any warrior. Together, the three of them formed a strange center, Seria the voice, Kalen the fist, Arya the heart. Above, the alien fleet circled Ashen Reach. Karvek prowled the bridge of the Scourge of Veia, restless and furious. Reports of failure piled at his feet. Patrols destroyed, hunters slain, machines gutted. The prey had not only resisted, they had adapted. They had learned. The hunters had always believed themselves the supreme predators. They had conquered countless worlds, reduced civilizations to ash. But these humans, they fought with a savagery that unsettled even the most seasoned officers. They rally around a leader, one said quietly. A woman, she speaks, and they follow. Perhaps we should cut off the head before the body can grow. Karvek's teeth bared in a cruel grin. Yes, find her, bring her to me, alive. I will break her before her people's eyes, and then they will remember what they are, nothing but prey. But even as he spoke, some of his officers shifted uneasily. None dared voice it, but the thought hung unspoken in every mind. What if she is not prey at all? That night, Seria sat alone before the spire. Its pulsing light bathed her face, its silent whispers echoing through her mind. She closed her eyes, and visions came again, fleets rising from forgotten docks, banners unfurling across stars, humanity roaring back into the galaxy. But along with the triumph came shadows, cities burning, planets scorched, countless bodies strewn across battlefields. Humanity victorious, but at a cost so great it seemed to swallow all light. A shiver ran through her. Was this the future or the past? Was the spire warning her or urging her onward? She bowed her head. What do you want of me? She whispered. What am I to make of them? The spire gave no answer, only its steady pulse, like the beat of a vast heart. Behind her, Kalen approached. His footsteps were heavy, but he stopped short of disturbing her. You carry it well, he said quietly. Seria opened her eyes. It is heavier than you think. I know. For a long time, they stood in silence together, watching the light. Then Seria spoke almost to herself. They call me their voice, but what if I lead them to ruin? Kalen glanced at her, his expression hard but steady. Then we will follow you into ruin. Better to die as hunters than live as prey. Seria looked at him for a long moment, then nodded once. At dawn, she called the survivors together once more. We have stood against the hunters, and we have endured. But we are not here to endure alone. We are not here to hide in the dark until they burn us out. We are here because we were meant to rise. She lifted her staff, its light casting long shadows. From this moment, we are no longer the lost. We are no longer the scattered. We are a people reborn, and we will take back the stars. Her voice rang through the chamber, echoing off the stone like a promise etched into the bones of the world. And this time, the survivors did not only shout in answer. They knelt, they pledged. They became something new, not just survivors, not just prey. They became a people. The vault no longer felt like a tomb. Corridors once filled with silence now echoed with footsteps, voices, and the clang of metal. The air still carried smoke and blood, but also the hum of life, of determination. Survivors no longer wandered aimlessly or clung to fear. They trained, they sharpened blades, they patrolled. For the first time since their awakening, the humans were not only waiting for the enemy, they were preparing to find them. Kalen stood at the barricade, the alien blade strapped across his back, armor plates scavenged from slain hunters bound to his chest. Around him crouched a squad of 10, men and women hardened by fire, eyes bright with purpose. They carried energy bows that hissed faintly with every movement, alien rifles that Darren's apprentices had coaxed back into life, and knives forged from shards of alien steel. They waited for Seria's word. She stood near the spire, her staff glowing faintly, her voice carrying to all who gathered in the chamber. For days, we have fought in our halls. We have spilled blood and buried our dead within stone, but this vault is not a cage. It is not our prison. It is the beginning. The hunters think themselves masters of this world, but they do not know it as we will. Today, we take our first step into the surface. Today, the hunters learn what it means to be hunted. The roar of voices shook the chamber, weapons lifted high, eyes burned with fire. Kalen's squad was the first to move. The path to the surface was jagged and broken, carved by alien machinery and the collapse of ancient stone. The survivors climbed through tunnels choked with rubble, through shafts that opened into daylight for the first time. The light blinded them at first. After so long in darkness, the sun was a blade across their vision. Kalen blinked against it, then stared out across the ruins of Ashen Reach. The surface was a wasteland of crumbling towers and shattered streets, a dead city long consumed by time. Dust lay thick on every stone, ash still hanging from the fires of the alien raids. Above, the sky was streaked with the contrails of patrol craft, circling like carrion birds. But to Kalen, it was not only ruin. It was a battlefield. Their first target was a hunting party. Scouts had reported them, 6 aliens and 2 of their spidery flame machines, searching the ruins for stragglers. Kalen led his squad through the broken streets, moving from shadow to shadow, the sound of their breaths masked by the wind whistling through hollow towers. When the hunters came into view, Kalen gave a single-hand signal. The humans struck from above. Energy bolts rained down from shattered windows, searing into alien flesh. One of the machines collapsed in fire before it could even turn its furnace. The hunters roared, plasma rifles blazing, but Kalen was already moving, sliding down crumbling stone, charging into the melee with his blade drawn. He met the first alien head-on, steel clashing against claw. He drove his blade into its throat and spun to strike the next. Behind him, Arya loosed a shaft of energy that pierced a hunter's chest, sending it staggering. The battle was over in minutes. The last alien fell with Kalen's blade buried in its chest, its claws scrabbling weakly at his armor before it collapsed. The humans stripped the corpses, salvaging power cells, weapons, and armor. They dragged the wrecked machine back toward the vault. When they returned, they were met not with silence but with cheers. Word spread quickly. The hunters could be struck. The machines could be burned. The surface was not theirs alone. Seria wasted no time. She divided the survivors into bands, raiders to strike patrols, scouts to map the ruins, workers to strengthen the vault. Every man and woman found a purpose. Those who could not fight healed, forged, or carried. Kalen led raid after raid, striking patrols, ambushing convoys, vanishing back into the ruins before reinforcements could arrive. With every victory, their weapons grew sharper, their armor stronger, their confidence deeper. The hunters began to falter. On the bridge of the Scourge of Veia, Karvek read the reports with mounting fury. 3 patrols destroyed, machines disabled, power cells stolen. They strike like shadows and vanish before response. Our hunters speak of fear. The officer who spoke hesitated before adding, they call the one with the blade the first hunter. They whisper his name in their dying breaths. Karvek slammed his claws against the console, sparks flying. He is nothing, flesh in armor, a beast with a stolen blade, and yet you let him slaughter my hunters, the officer bowed low. They know the ruins, they fight with cunning, they are changing. Karvek's eyes burned with fury and unease. Then we will change faster, send more, burn the city to its roots if we must. Let the prey see what it means to defy us. But deep inside, a thought coiled like poison. What if they are no longer prey at all? That night, Kalen sat with Arya on the roof of a shattered tower. Below, the ruins stretched in every direction, fires burning where alien patrols had clashed with human raiders. Arya watched the horizon, her bow resting across her knees. "Do you feel it?" she asked softly. Kaelin glanced at her. "What? The world, it is waking with us. Every step we take, every strike we make, it feels as though we are not only fighting them, we are claiming this place." Kaelin said nothing for a long time. The wind tugged at his hair, carrying with it the distant smell of smoke. "It does not feel like enough," he said at last. Arya frowned. "What do you mean? We strike patrols, yes. We steal their weapons, we kill their hunters, but the fleet remains above. They circle like vultures, and if they turn their fire fully on us," he shook his head. "We are strong, but we are not yet enough." Arya placed a hand on his arm. "Not yet, but we are growing. Every day more awaken. Every day more remember who they are. Do not forget what Seria says, we are only beginning." Kaelin nodded, though the weight in his chest remained. In the vault, Seria stood before the spire once more. Its light pulsed brighter each day, as though feeding on the victories of her people. She could feel its presence within her mind more clearly now, its whispers shaping her thoughts, its visions guiding her steps. She saw fleets rising again, not in dreams, but in glimpses so vivid they felt real. She saw stars bending under humanity's will, worlds remade in their image. And she saw something else, herself at the center of it, her voice carrying across the void, her hand shaping the course of a reborn people. It frightened her, even as it filled her with purpose. "We are awake," she whispered to the spire. "We are no longer prey, but tell me, will we become hunters alone, or something greater still?" The spire pulsed once, steady and deep, as if to say, "That choice is yours." The next raid was their boldest yet. Kaelin led 50 men and women into the heart of the ruins, where a supply conv crawled under the shadow of alien patrol craft. The humans struck with precision, collapsing towers onto the lead vehicles, firing energy bolts from every angle, swarming the convoy like wolves. The aliens fought with fury, but they were unprepared for prey that fought like predators. Within moments, the convoy burned. Humans seized weapons, power cells, food, and armor. For the first time, they captured not only supplies, but prisoners. 2 hunters lay bound in chains of salvaged steel, snarling and spitting, their eyes wide with a fear they had never known. When the raiders returned with their spoils, the vault erupted in triumph. Seria stood above them all, her staff blazing, her voice ringing out like thunder. "Today we have not only struck them, we have broken them. They bleed, they burn, and now they fear." The humans roared in answer, the sound shaking the ancient vault. Kaelin stood among them, his blade red with alien blood, and for the first time he smiled, because the hunt had truly begun. The 2 captured hunters were dragged into the spire chamber, bound in chains of salvaged steel. Their scaled bodies were battered, their armor scorched, but their eyes still burned with hatred. They thrashed and hissed, teeth bared, their guttural voices echoing like the growl of predators denied their kill. The humans gathered around them in a wide circle, weapons raised. The room buzzed with tension, fear, anger, triumph. For the first time, they looked into the faces of their enemy not as prey staring at death, but as victors staring at captives. Seria stepped forward, her staff glowing faintly in her hand. She studied the aliens for a long moment, her gaze calm, unshaken. "They know who we are," she said softly, "but we do not know who they are. Today that changes." She gestured, and the prisoners were forced to their knees. The first words were snarled in the alien tongue, harsh and guttural. Few among the humans understood, but the spire's pulse stirred faintly, and fragments of meaning surfaced in their minds. The hunters spat curses, calling them vermin, prey, carrion. They spoke of fire and slaughter, of the hunt that could not be denied. Kaelin stepped closer, blade in hand. His voice was a low growl. "Ask them why. Ask them why they come here, why they burned our dead city, why they tear us from our sleep." Seria lifted her hand, quieting him. She crouched before one of the captives, meeting its amber eyes. "Why do you hunt us?" she asked, her voice steady. The alien snarled, its words hissing through bloodied teeth. The spire's pulse translated them in fragments. "Because you are prey, because all is the hunt. The strong feed, the weak blade, this is the law." A murmur spread among the humans, Some shouted curses, others raised weapons in fury. Arya's face tightened with disgust. "That is not a reason," she said. "That is madness." The alien bared its teeth. "To deny the hunt is madness. To resist is madness. You live only to be slain. This is the order. You will learn it." Kalen's blade flashed up, pressing against the alien's throat. "Or perhaps you will learn ours." The room held its breath. For a moment it seemed Kalen would strike, would end the prisoner with a single cut. But Seria's voice cut through the tension. "Enough." Kalen froze, then slowly withdrew the blade, though his eyes burned with fury. Seria rose, her gaze sweeping across the circle of survivors. "Killing them now will teach us nothing. We must know their ways, their numbers, their strength. Knowledge is as great a weapon as steel." She turned back to the captives. "You believe us prey, yet here you kneel, chained and broken. Tell me, does prey chain its hunters?" The aliens hissed, but one faltered, its eyes flicking to the spire behind her. For the first time, a trace of uncertainty crossed its face. The interrogation stretched on through the night. Piece by piece, through curses and snarls, the humans drew fragments of truth. The hunters were part of a vast people who believed in only two things: predator and prey. Every world they found was consumed by this creed. Civilizations that resisted were crushed, those that yielded were devoured. Their fleet above Ashen Reach was only a fragment of their strength. Hundreds of ships prowled the galaxy, their numbers beyond counting. "They speak of endless conquest," Arya murmured, her voice low with unease. "If they are right, then even if we survive here, the storm waiting beyond will be greater than we can imagine." Kalen's jaw tightened. "Then we become greater still." But not all the questions found answers. When asked of humanity, why they had come to Ashen Reach, why they had attacked the vault, the aliens' words grew strange. They spoke of whispers among their kind, legends of prey who had once been predators. They spoke of warnings ignored, of forbidden ruins. "You were known," one said, its voice low, almost fearful. "Long ago, you were hunters greater than any. You burned the stars, you vanished, but the stories remained. They said to never wake you. They said the fire would return." The chamber fell silent. Seria's eyes narrowed. "So you knew," the alien hissed. "Our leaders knew. They sought proof. They sought your end before you could rise again. That is why we came, to burn the embers before they became flame." A ripple of realization swept the humans. Their awakening had not been an accident. It had been an invasion born of fear. Seria rose, her voice cold as steel. "Then they have failed." What to do with the prisoners divided the survivors. Some, hardened by loss and rage, demanded their deaths. "They slaughtered our kin," one man spat. "They burned our world. Why should we let them live another breath?" Others argued for mercy. "If we kill them now," Arya said, "we are no better than they claim we are, and perhaps they can be made to see we are more than prey and predator." Kalen said nothing for a long time. He stared at the bound creatures, at the hatred still burning in their eyes, and felt only the weight of choice. To let them live was to risk betrayal. To kill them was to deny the chance to learn more. At last, Seria spoke. "They live. For now, they will see what we become. They will carry the story of what they witnessed back to their kind. If we choose to release them, that will be our weapon too." The decision was made. The prisoners would live, watched, chained, studied. But in the eyes of many, including Kalen, the choice felt like a blade held by its edge. In the alien fleet above, Karvek received word of the capture. His fury was so great that even his officers flinched from his presence. He raged, claws tearing gashes into steel. The thought that his hunters, his finest, were chained like cattle beneath the very prey they had sought to exterminate burned like acid. "Send no more patrols," he snarled. "No more squads to be picked apart like carrion. We strike with the fleet. We burn the ruins to ash. Let the world itself collapse on them." But even as he spoke, a shadow of doubt flickered through his mind. The stories, the old warnings, could it be true? Had his people indeed awoken something far older, far deadlier than themselves? He silenced the thought with rage. "They are prey," he growled, "and prey cannot hunt the hunter." Yet deep within, the first thread of fear had already taken root. That night, Seria dreamed. The spire's light filled her mind, carrying her beyond the vault, beyond ashen reach into the stars. She saw fleets burning, worlds shattering, humanity rising like fire reborn. She saw alien hunters kneeling in chains, their creed broken, their voices silent. But she also saw shadows, the cost of fire. She saw endless war, endless blood, a galaxy consumed by the clash of predator and prey. When she woke, the spire still pulsed faintly, its light steady, patient. The choice was hers. The choice was theirs. The sky over Ashen Reach burned red. Smoke rose in great columns from the ruins below, drifting into the upper atmosphere. Patrol craft streaked across the horizon like deadly streaks of fire, scanning the shattered city for prey. The humans had seen this day coming, but no amount of preparation could quiet the tremor of fear that ran through their veins. Kalen stood on the roof of the tallest remaining tower, surveying the horizon. He could see the alien fleet in the distance, their silhouettes vast against the morning sun. Hundreds of ships glinted in formation, their hulls bristling with weapons, a storm of metal and fire that had come to claim what the humans had reclaimed. Arya crouched beside him, scanning the streets below for signs of ambush. "They are coming in waves," she said, voice low but steady. "Too many to fight one-on-one." Kalen nodded. "Then we do not fight one-on-one, we make them come to us, and we shape the field." Seria addressed the survivors in the spire chamber. The light from the spire reflected off her staff, casting long, sharp shadows that danced across the stone walls. "Today they bring the full force of their fleet," she said, voice steady, ringing with authority. "They believe us prey, scattered and weak. They do not know the fire that sleeps within us. They do not know what it means to awaken a people long forgotten. Today, we fight not just for survival, but to remind the stars that humanity rises again." The survivors raised their weapons, voices roaring in answer. The sound rolled through the vault like thunder, a chorus of steel and determination. Kalen led a strike team to the surface ruins, moving quickly through alleys, collapsed towers, and smoke-choked streets. Using the intelligence gained from the prisoners, they avoided the strongest patrols, targeting smaller craft and isolated squads. Arya and the others laid traps across key choke points. Energy snares hummed silently beneath rubble, awaiting the alien patrols. Explosive charges, scavenged and modified from Darren's work, were hidden along streets where the enemy would be forced to pass. When the first wave arrived, the humans did not flee. The patrol craft descended toward the ruined city, plasma cannons lancing the streets below. But the humans struck from above and below simultaneously. Traps detonated, toppling collapsed towers onto the craft. Ambushes shredded squads before reinforcements could arrive. Humans wielded recovered alien rifles with deadly accuracy, their movements fast, precise, and synchronized in ways the aliens could not anticipate. Kalen fought in the thick of it, a storm of blades and energy. He carved through squads of hunters, dodged plasma bursts, and led small teams to disable flame machines before they could unleash destruction. Every victory brought new weapons, new power cells, and new confidence. The tide of battle began to shift. On the flagship Scourge of Veia, Karvek roared in fury. "Stop them," he demanded, claws raking the console. "Do not let them survive." "Burn everything," reports continued to arrive. Patrols destroyed, machines disabled, ships damaged. Even the smallest bands of humans were turning the ruins into traps and killing grounds. "They adapt too quickly," one officer muttered, unease creeping into their tone. "They are learning from every strike, every loss. They are becoming predators themselves." Karvek's amber eyes flared with rage. "They are prey," he snarled. "Prey cannot learn faster than hunters. They cannot turn our strength against us. Prepare the central bombardment. Reduce the surface to ash." The bombardment began. Vast beams of energy struck the ruins, toppling towers and igniting fires that spread across blocks of stone and steel. The sky turned black with smoke, the air shaking with the force of falling debris. Humans ran through the chaos, dodging rubble, dragging the wounded, firing at advancing squads. The spire pulsed brighter than ever, feeding power and guidance to Seria and her people. Ancient mechanisms awoke across the vault and into the surface ruins, forming barricades, activating hidden weaponry, and even opening secret tunnels that had lain dormant for centuries. The humans learned to use the ruins themselves as weapons. Streets collapsed to crush alien squads. Towers fell to bury patrols beneath stone. Energy traps lit entire blocks ablaze. The hunters screamed as they realized the prey they had hunted so relentlessly was no longer fleeing. They were fighting back. Kalen moved through the chaos like a shadow. He slashed through hunters, seized a fallen rifle, and fired point-blank into a machine that had been targeting survivors below. Flames erupted, painting the walls with fire and smoke. Arya covered his flank, firing arrow after energy arrow, cutting down patrols before they could close. For a brief moment, Kalen allowed himself to feel triumph. The humans were holding. They were winning. Then a shadow fell across the street. A massive war machine descended from one of the alien ships, walking on spindly legs and bristling with weapons. Its furnace roared, flame licking the edges of the streets. It moved deliberately, crushing stone, firing plasma cannons, and incinerating anything in its path. Kalen's squad froze. A single misstep could mean death. Seria's voice rang out, cutting through the din. "Focus, do not falter, use what we have learned." The humans attacked as one. Traps detonated beneath the war machine's legs, destabilizing it. Kalen led a squad to its rear, climbing onto the rubble it had created and slashing through weak points in its armor. Arya fired at its energy vents, causing sparks and smoke to blind the machine. Others disabled nearby power nodes, cutting off its fuel source. Finally, Kalen drove his blade into a vulnerable seam near its core. The machine shuddered, emitted a final scream of grinding metal, and collapsed in a heap of fire and sparks. The surviving hunters scattered, some fleeing back toward their ships, others falling under human blades. The humans roared their victory, exhausted but alive. The fleet above faltered, watching the slaughter. Karvek's hands clenched into fists. "They are stronger than we imagined. Strike again, destroy everything." But even as he gave the order, his officers began to murmur, fear creeping into their eyes. The humans had done the impossible. They had turned the ruins into a weapon, they had struck with precision, and they had survived the bombardment. For the first time, doubt crept into the hunter's creed. As the sun set over the ruins, the humans gathered on the towers and streets they had reclaimed. The fires burned low, the smoke curling into the evening sky. Kalen stood beside Seria and Arya, watching the survivors tend to the wounded and rebuild barricades. "We have held them," Kalen said, voice hoarse. "But this was only the first wave. They will return with more." Seria's eyes glowed faintly in the spire's light. "And we will be ready. We have learned what they are. We have learned what we can be. We are no longer prey." Arya placed a hand on Kalen's shoulder. "We are hunters now, but something more too. We fight for our people, not just survival. That is what they cannot take from us." Kalen nodded. He looked out at the horizon, at the burning ruins, at the ships that lingered above like vultures, and he smiled. Because for the first time in centuries, humanity was awake, united, and no longer afraid. The sky may have been breaking, but beneath it, fire had been reborn. The first light of dawn broke across the ruins of Ashen Reach, catching the smoke and fire in streaks of crimson and gold. The city below was scarred, shattered, yet alive. Human banners, hastily fashioned from torn fabrics and recovered armor, fluttered from towers and rooftops. Kalen stood at the edge of a crumbling spire, surveying the battlefield one last time. Around him, the survivors moved with a purpose that no longer needed words. They had learned to fight together, to protect one another, to strike with deadly precision. They had become more than a people, they had become a force. Above, the alien fleet hovered, black silhouettes against the dawn. Their numbers were vast, their weapons formidable. They had expected prey, scattered and weak. They had found warriors. Seria emerged beside Kalen, her staff glowing brighter than ever. The spire pulsed in resonance with her, feeding her strength and clarity. "They believe us broken," she said quietly. "They believe this is the end, but it is only the beginning." Kalen nodded. Then let's remind them who we are. The humans moved as one, striking first. Scouts ignited traps across the streets, collapsing towers onto the alien advance. Archers fired bolts that crackled with stolen energy, tearing through patrol squads. Kalen led a squad into the heart of the battlefield, blades flashing, rifles screaming. Arya moved among the wounded, healing and tending, her presence steadying those around her. Every soldier she saved became part of the fight again, their strength multiplied. Seria lifted her staff, the spire's light radiating through her. She directed the humans like a conductor with an orchestra of destruction. Ancient mechanisms, long dormant, stirred across the ruins. Hidden weapons, energy arrays, and defensive constructs erupted from beneath the stone, turning the battlefield into a maze of death for the alien hunters. The tide of the battle shifted irreversibly. Karvek watched from the flagship, fury and disbelief coiling in his chest. "They cannot be prey," he hissed. "They strike with cunning, with coordination. They are predators." His officers cowered under his gaze, whispering of failure, of dread. Even the central bombardment, the greatest weapon of the fleet, faltered against the humans' traps and counterattacks. "Send the commanders down," Karvek snarled. "Bring me their leader. I will break her. I will show them what prey truly is." The humans intercepted the commanders before they could reach the vault. Kalen's squad ambushed them, striking from rooftops and alleyways, collapsing streets beneath their feet. Flame and plasma, once a terror, became a weapon they wielded against the hunters. One by one, alien commanders fell, their screams echoing across the ruins. Kalen stood over the last, breathing hard, his blade poised. The creature's amber eyes widened in disbelief, and then fear. "Your prey," it hissed. Kalen's voice was cold. "No longer." With a single strike, it fell. Seria led the survivors to the central plaza, where the spire's light shone through shattered buildings like a beacon. She raised her staff high, and the humans followed, their weapons held aloft, voices roaring in unison. The fleet above hesitated. They had expected prey to scatter, to die quickly, to be crushed without struggle. They had not expected this, a people awakened, united, and burning with fire older than their own. From the spire, visions flowed into the humans' minds. Ships rising from forgotten docks, weapons built in long-lost factories, fleets spanning the stars. Humanity remembered itself, and with memory came power. The humans struck the fleet in waves, descending on landing craft, crippling machines, and seizing weapons. They moved like phantoms, every strike precise, every victory amplifying the next. Kalen fought at the forefront, a storm of motion and steel. Arya's healing kept them alive where death would have taken them. Seria's guidance orchestrated the chaos, turning instinct into strategy, rage into purpose. The alien fleet began to retreat, but Karvek refused to yield. He descended himself, massive, terrifying, to face the humans directly. His ship smashed into the plaza below, throwing debris everywhere, but the humans did not scatter. Kalen met him first, blades clashing against claws and energy shields. Arya fired from a distance, keeping hunters at bay. Seria called down the spire's energy, striking the alien leader with a beam that seared through steel and flesh alike. The battle raged across the plaza, stone cracking beneath their feet, fire streaking the sky. And then, with a final combined effort, Karvek fell, his massive body toppling as the humans pressed forward. The remaining ships fled. Ashen Reach was quiet at last. The survivors gathered in the plaza, bloodied and exhausted, yet triumphant. Kalen leaned on his blade, breathing heavy, and finally allowed himself a small smile. Seria stood before the spire, her staff glowing with a soft, steady light. "We have won the battle," she said, "but this is only the beginning. We are awake, we are alive. And now we take our place among the stars." Arya looked around at the survivors, their faces alight with fire and determination. "We are more than hunters now," she said softly. "We are a people reborn, and we will not forget it." The spire pulsed, as if affirming her words. The first human ships, long buried beneath the ruins, awakened. Craft built before the era of stasis, waiting patiently for their people to rise again, took to the skies. Humanity had not only reclaimed their home, they had reclaimed the legacy of the stars. Kalen, Arya, and Seria stood atop the spire, watching the first ships lift off, engines blazing. The horizon stretched wide and endless. "Where do we go now?" Kalen asked. Seria's eyes shone with a vision broader than any one planet. "Wherever we choose, we are awake, we are humanity. The stars themselves await." And as the humans of Ashen Reach lifted into the sky, victorious, the spire pulsed brighter than ever, a beacon for the rebirth of a civilization that had slept too long and now would never again be silenced. Humanity had awakened. And the galaxy would remember.